Have you ever felt like the world around you is pretending? That everyone is playing a game they don't even realize they're playing, and yet they take it so seriously that to laugh would feel like blasphemy. Imagine suddenly waking up in the middle of a dream, realizing that all the struggles, the arguments, the endless running were part of a story written only in the mind. That moment of clarity is both thrilling and unsettling, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And before we go further, let me whisper a small invitation. If these words stir something inside you, if they feel like a mirror held up to your own quiet suspicions about life, consider joining us here. Subscribe to this channel, not as a duty, but as a gesture of curiosity. It's like sitting around the fire with fellow wanderers of the soul. Together, we explore these questions not to escape life, but to live it more deeply. You see, when this realization comes, that much of what we call reality is woven from fragile agreements, you suddenly find yourself outside the crowd. Money is no longer sacred paper. Time feels less like an iron law and more like a passing thought. Careers, titles, social masks, they look like costumes in a theater. And though this clarity liberates, it also isolates. For the world, strange as it may be, is glued together by illusions people collectively protect. And when you stop protecting them, you become dangerous. Try telling a group of children quarreling over a board game that the pieces are just bits of plastic and cardboard. They won't thank you. They'll glare at you, defend the seriousness of their play. And isn't that what adults do too? They fight, despair, boast, all for the sake of illusions they cannot bear to see exposed. Those who dare to reveal them, mystics, poets, prophets, have always been mocked, feared, even silenced. Not because they lacked truth, but because truth shakes the stage too violently. So what is one to do with this strange vision? To retreat into bitterness? To act superior to others? No, that only forges another illusion. The true challenge is to hold this seeing gently, almost playfully. To know the world is a play, and yet to remain on stage, dancing with a lighter step. To laugh, to cry, to work, to love, but with a twinkle in the eye, remembering the game. For the master is not the one who refuses to act, but the one who acts fully. Without forgetting it is all theater. When you begin to see through the seriousness of the game, it is as if a curtain has been drawn back, and for the first time, you glimpse the machinery turning behind the scenes. What once felt immovable now feels strangely fragile, like a painted backdrop that could collapse with a single gust of wind. And yet, most people walk past this backdrop as though it were carved from stone. They do not question, because to question is to invite collapse, and collapse terrifies. This is why awakening always feels like both a blessing and a burden. To see the truth is exhilarating, like suddenly realizing that you've been dreaming and now you are awake. But it is also profoundly unsettling, because you now face a choice. Do you play along with the others, pretending you too are asleep? Or do you live according to what you've seen, even if it sets you apart, even if it unsettles those around you? The danger is not only in how others react, but in how you carry this new vision. It is easy to become hardened, to grow cynical, to sneer at those still caught in illusions. But cynicism is just another mask, another form of blindness. To laugh at the game without love is to forget that you were once just as enchanted. The task is more delicate. It is to laugh with tenderness, to see the absurdity and yet still participate, but without being caught, without being bound. Think of the actor who knows he is on stage. He plays his role fully. He weeps, he rages, he loves, but inside he carries the secret. It is all a performance. The audience is moved by his sincerity, but he never forgets. And when the curtain falls, he bows and walks off untouched. That is the art of living awake. To throw yourself into the play with all your heart, and yet to carry the freedom of knowing it is a play. This is what makes the awakened so rare and so misunderstood. They walk lightly, as if their steps do not leave a mark. They laugh at things others take with deadly seriousness. They weep at things others overlook. They carry a freedom that feels both beautiful and threatening. For those still caught in illusions, this freedom can look like madness. But consider this. If the world is a game, if all these structures are fragile, why does awakening matter at all? If everything is illusion, why not dismiss it entirely? Because dismissing the game is itself another illusion. The point is not to abandon life, but to live it with a different awareness. To eat, to walk, to speak, to love, yet with a thread of silence woven through it all, a remembrance that nothing here can imprison you. Awakening is not an escape from life. It is the rediscovery of life. It is the laughter that arises when you realize you were never bound, never trapped. The walls that surrounded you were paper walls, and they dissolve the moment you touch them. But once dissolved, the world is not less. It is more. Colors are sharper, sounds richer. Even pain carries a strange radiance. You do not run from life. You step more deeply into it, and yet, there is always a temptation after such a vision, to cling to it, to make it into a new doctrine, a new badge of superiority. The mind whispers, I see what others do not. I am awake while they still sleep. And in that very moment, the clarity you discovered begins to fade, clouded again by pride. This is the subtle danger of awakening. The ego will even use truth to build itself a throne. It will turn insight into ideology, freedom into armor. But real awakening is not something you can claim. The moment you say, I have it, you have already lost it. It is like trying to hold sunlight in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the quicker it escapes. Awakening is a movement, not a possession. It is a flowing river, not a stone to collect. It cannot be branded, cannot be owned, cannot be displayed as proof of enlightenment. It can only be lived moment by moment, like breathing. This is why the awakened often appear ordinary. They do not parade their vision. They do not wear special robes, nor demand reverence. They slip into crowds unnoticed. You might pass them in the market and never realize. For the truth is not loud. It does not shout for recognition. It whispers quietly, like wind moving through trees. Those who are truly awake are not concerned with being seen as awake. They are simply free. To live this way is to carry a paradox. On the outside, you laugh, you eat, you work, you speak just as everyone else. But inside, there is a vast silence, a space untouched by circumstance. You may feel joy, but you are not bound by joy. You may feel sorrow, but you are not imprisoned by sorrow. The waves rise and fall, but the depth of the ocean remains still. This is the freedom that no one can give you, and no one can take away. Of course, the world rarely celebrates this kind of freedom. Societies honor achievement, wealth, status, authority. They honor the person who builds towers, not the one who sits quietly at their base. They praise the one who conquers, not the one who dissolves into silence. But here lies the mystery. The one who dissolves is freer than the conqueror. The one who laughs lightly is richer than the king. The one who sees through the game carries a joy no crown can match. Imagine two people watching the same play. One is completely absorbed. He forgets it is a performance. He weeps and rages as though the events were real. The other also feels deeply, but somewhere within he remembers, this is theater. Both are moved, but only one is free. Life is like that. Awakening does not strip away the beauty of the play. It allows you to enter it more fully, without fear, without clinging. Perhaps this is why those who awaken are often misunderstood. They seem detached, but their detachment is not coldness, it is freedom. They seem carefree, but their carelessness is not indifference, it is love unburdened. They can laugh while others tremble, and cry while others are numb. They carry within them the strange lightness of someone who knows that, no matter how fierce the storm, they are not the storm. They are the sky through which the storm passes. But here arises another question. If the awakened see through the game, why do they remain in it? Why not walk away entirely, retreat into caves and forests, abandon the world of illusion? Some do, but many stay, and their staying is itself a teaching. For the point is not escape, it is presence. To leave the game completely is to miss its strange beauty. To stay in it knowingly, without being caught, is to taste the deeper freedom. Think of it this way. A musician does not stop playing once she realizes the notes are not reality, but symbols. On the contrary, her playing becomes freer, more alive, because she knows the difference between the map and the territory. So too with life. Once you see that the world's dramas are not ultimate truths, you can finally participate in them without being consumed. You can love without chains, work without slavery, play without fear. The awakened person laughs more, not less. They cry more deeply, not less. Their heart is more open, not more closed. For once you know the play is a play, you can let yourself feel every scene fully, without clinging to it. A comedy does not last forever, nor does a tragedy. The curtain always falls, and knowing this, you give yourself completely to each act while it lasts. This is why the presence of such people feels different. They do not resist life. They do not wrestle with it in the same way. They flow with it, not because they are weak, but because they no longer mistake the flow for imprisonment. To others, their calm looks strange, even infuriating. Why are you not anxious? People demand. Why are you not angry? Do you not care? But the awakened care more deeply than anyone else. They simply are not trapped by caring. They see the difference between love and attachment, between presence and possession. There is a stillness in them, like a flame that does not flicker no matter how strong the wind blows. Around them, people feel both comforted and unsettled. Comforted because something in their presence whispers, all is well. Unsettled because the same presence silently questions the seriousness of our own fears and ambitions. The awakened carry no argument, no ideology, no dogma, and yet their silence is more provocative than 1,000 words. Perhaps this is why societies so often resist them, for the world depends on seriousness, on people believing in the game. The economy thrives on fear of lack. Politics thrives on fear of others. Religion thrives on fear of punishment. But the awakened are immune to fear, and in that immunity, they become dangerous to the structures built on it. They are not rebels with weapons. They are rebels with laughter, with stillness, with a presence that cannot be controlled. And yet, their rebellion is not against the world, but for it. They see more clearly than anyone that life is not something to escape. but something to love in its fullness, without condition, without fear, to embrace both joy and sorrow, both gain and loss, both beginning and ending, with the same open heart. That is the essence of their freedom. There is something profoundly disarming about meeting someone who no longer clings. Most people, even when smiling, are holding on tightly to something: their status, their possessions, their reputation, their beliefs. You can feel the tension in their shoulders, hear it in their voices, see it in their restless eyes. They are always guarding, always defending, always afraid of losing what they think defines them. But when you meet one who has let go, you sense it instantly. Their presence is like an unclenched fist, like water flowing without resistance. This letting go does not mean they abandon life or live in indifference. Quite the opposite. It allows them to enter life more fully. When you are no longer obsessed with protecting an image of yourself, you can finally breathe. You can finally laugh without calculation, love without fear, give without keeping score. Such freedom feels almost otherworldly, but it is not from another world. It is from this one, lived without the chains of illusion. And yet, for those still caught, such freedom looks reckless. They mistake surrender for weakness, detachment for coldness, simplicity for ignorance. They cannot understand how someone could live without grasping, without defending, without endlessly striving. To them, a person who does not cling appears as a threat to the seriousness of the game. It is unsettling to watch someone smile while others are consumed with worry, to see someone at peace while the world trembles. But this peace is not naivety. It is not ignorance of suffering. In fact, it arises from seeing suffering clearly, without denial, without resistance. To resist suffering is to add another layer of pain. To accept it is to let it pass through. Like waves breaking against a shore, grief comes, joy comes, anger comes, love comes. All pass through the one who no longer clings. Nothing is held, nothing is denied. And because nothing is clung to, nothing leaves a wound. This is not easy. To live without clinging requires dying before death. It requires letting go of the self you thought you were, the stories you defended, the walls you built. And in that death, you discover a strange rebirth. What remains is not a frozen emptiness, but a living openness. A self that is no self. A freedom that is not escape, but intimacy. For when you no longer hold the world at arm's length, the world can finally touch you. That is why those who awaken are often described as childlike. Not childish, but childlike. Their laughter is unburdened, their curiosity alive, their wonder intact. They are not weighed down by the heavy seriousness that adulthood often demands. They move lightly, as though each moment were fresh. And yet, this lightness is born not from ignorance, but from passing through the fire of suffering and coming out free. To see such a person is to glimpse what is possible, not perfection, not some unreachable saintliness, but a simple, radiant presence. A human being who is fully here with nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. They are not above life. They are life itself, awake. And yet, one must be careful not to romanticize this state, as if awakening turns life into an endless bliss. The truth is subtler. The awakened still feel pain, still face loss, still encounter moments of grief and confusion. The difference is not that suffering disappears, but that it no longer imprisons them. It comes. It moves through. It leaves. Their hearts may break, but their hearts break open, not closed. Think of the sky. Clouds may gather, storms may rage, lightning may split the heavens. But through it all, the sky remains untouched. It does not resist the storm, nor does it cling to the sunshine when the clouds part. It holds both, and in holding both, it remains vast. The awakened are like this. Life still moves with its rhythms, but within them there is a spaciousness, a stillness that nothing can shake. To live this way is not to become invulnerable. It is to become transparent. Pain passes through, joy passes through, fear passes through, but none are clung to. What others call security, they no longer need. What others call identity, they no longer defend. What others call meaning, they no longer demand. And yet, in the absence of clinging, life shines more vividly than ever. Each breath becomes extraordinary. Each moment, even the smallest, feels like a miracle. For those still entangled in illusions, this kind of freedom looks almost impossible. Surely there must be a method, a system, a secret technique to achieve it, they say. But there is none. The way is not about adding more, but about letting go. Not about becoming something new, but about seeing through what you are not. Awakening is not an achievement. It is the falling away of the need to achieve. This is why it cannot be taught in the conventional sense. Teachers may point, they may gesture, they may use words and metaphors. But what they offer is not a formula, not a set of instructions. They offer presence. They offer reminders. They create conditions in which the illusion might loosen its grip. But the seeing must be your own. No one can give it to you. No one can walk into the silence on your behalf. And yet, paradoxically, the presence of the awakened can ignite the same seeing in others. Like a candle lighting another candle, no flame is lost, but light multiplies. This is why throughout history, people have been drawn to sages, mystics, teachers, not because they carried doctrines, but because their very being radiated something unshakable. Around them, the noise of the mind softened, and for a moment, others glimpsed their own depth. In this way, awakening is not just personal, it is contagious. A single presence can shift the atmosphere of an entire room. A single word, spoken from silence, can cut through years of confusion. And sometimes, no word is needed at all. Just sitting with one who has seen through the game can be enough. Not because they give you anything, but because they remind you of what you already are. But here is the mystery. The more deeply you awaken, the less there is of you to awaken. The self you once defended, the identity you once clung to, begins to dissolve like mist under the rising sun. You realize that the one who was searching was itself part of the illusion. The seeker disappears, and in its place is only seeing, only presence, only life itself unfolding. At first, this can feel terrifying. The ego fights for survival, whispering that without it, you will be nothing, a void, a shadow. But as the illusion loosens, you discover something astonishing. In losing yourself, you find a deeper self, not the little one made of stories and fears, but the vastness that was always there, silently holding everything. You are no longer the wave crashing anxiously upon the shore. You are the ocean itself, calm even as the waves rise and fall. This realization changes everything. Relationships no longer feel like battles of possession, but dances of presence. Work no longer feels like a burden of proving yourself, but an expression of being. Even solitude no longer feels like emptiness, but fullness itself. The world has not changed, and yet it feels entirely different, because the one looking at it has dissolved. And this is where words begin to fail. For how can language describe the disappearance of the one who speaks? How can thought capture the silence in which thought arises? At best, metaphors can point, like fingers toward the moon. But the moon is not in the finger, and the truth is not in the words. It is in the direct seeing, the immediate experience that cannot be translated. This is why mystics have always spoken in poetry, in paradox, in riddles, not to confuse, but to remind you that what they point to is beyond thought. It is like hearing music through a wall. You can sense the rhythm, feel the vibration, but the fullness is missing until the door is opened. The awakened cannot give you the music. They can only invite you to open the door yourself. And once you do, you realize the music was never outside. It was always playing within you. This dissolving of the separate self is what traditions have called union, liberation, enlightenment. But these words often mislead. They sound like destinations, achievements, trophies for the soul. In truth, it is not about gaining anything at all. It is about losing what was never real. It is about waking up from the dream of being a separate fragment and realizing you have always been the whole. And yet, here too lies a paradox. For once this realization dawns, life continues. The body still eats, the mouth still speaks, the hands still work. The dream does not vanish, but its grip loosens. The play continues, but now you know you are not the role. You wear it lightly, like a costume, stepping on and off the stage without fear. You are in the world, but not of it. And so, the question arises, if there is no longer a separate self, who is it that lives? Who is it that chooses, that speaks, that acts? The answer comes not in philosophy, but in silence. Life itself lives. Breathing happens. Words arise. Movements unfold. There is no doer behind them, no little eye pulling the strings. The river flows without needing a manager. The tree grows without needing permission. The wind moves without needing a plan. To see this is to discover an ease that is unimaginable to the mind. For the mind believes it must control, must plan, must protect. It spends its energy in endless rehearsals of what could go wrong. But when the illusion of control falls away, what remains is a simple trust. Not the naive trust of ignoring danger, but the deep trust that life knows how to be life. Just as the heart beats without your command, so too does the rest of existence move without your grip. This trust brings with it a profound relaxation. You no longer wake each morning carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. You no longer believe that without your constant effort, everything will collapse. Instead, you watch in wonder as life continues, as it always has, without your interference. It is like letting go of the reins and discovering the horse knows the path better than you ever did. Of course, the ego resists this. It insists, if I do not control, I will be nothing. If I do not cling, I will disappear. And in a sense, it is right. The ego does disappear. But what remains is far more alive than the ego ever was. What remains is vast, open, limitless. And in that openness, life expresses itself more beautifully than you could have planned. Creativity flows, love flows, laughter flows, without effort, without struggle. This is why those who awaken often speak of life as a dance. A dance has rhythm, movement, unpredictability. You cannot choreograph every step. You can only join it. And when you stop insisting on leading, you find yourself carried by the music, moving more gracefully than you ever imagined. Yet from the outside, this way of living looks strange. To those still trapped in the illusion of control, it seems reckless, irresponsible. How can you live without plans, without grasping, without anxiety? They ask. But what looks like recklessness is actually freedom. What looks like irresponsibility is a deeper responsibility to life itself, not to the ego's demands. And in this freedom, something unexpected happens. Compassion deepens. Because once you see that you are not separate, that life itself is living through you, you cannot help but recognize the same in others. Their struggles are not foreign. They are your own. Their pain is not distant. It is felt in the same heart. The walls between me and you crumble, and what remains is simple, undeniable intimacy. This intimacy is not sentimental. It is not built on effort or obligation. It is the natural expression of seeing clearly. When the illusion of separateness dissolves, kindness flows without calculation. You do not ask, "Should I care?" You simply care. You do not ask, "What will I get in return?" You simply give. Compassion ceases to be a virtue to be cultivated and becomes as natural as breathing. This is why awakened ones throughout history have often been described as overflowing with love. But it is not the love of possession, not the love that clings or demands. It is love without conditions, love without fear. A love that does not say, "I love you because you are mine," but simply, "I love because love is what I am." To the ordinary mind, this sounds impossible, even dangerous. If I love without condition, won't I be hurt? Won't people take advantage of me? Won't I lose myself? But this fear comes only from the illusion of a fragile self that must be defended. When that illusion falls, there is no self to be lost, only love to be expressed. Hurt may come, yes, but it passes through like the wind. No wound remains, because nothing was clung to. This love is not weak. It is fierce in its gentleness, unstoppable in its stillness. It does not collapse under betrayal, nor does it grow arrogant in praise. It flows like a river, sometimes quiet, sometimes raging, but always moving, always alive. And those who taste even a drop of it are forever changed. For once you have felt love that asks nothing of you, that holds you without judgment, you cannot forget. It is the fragrance of truth, and it lingers long after the flower has passed. From this love arises a new way of seeing the world. Enemies become mirrors. Strangers become reflections. Every encounter is no longer a threat, but an opportunity to recognize yourself. Even suffering in others becomes a call to compassion, not because you should respond, but because you cannot help but respond. It is as natural as reaching out your hand when you see someone fall. And this love is not limited to people. It extends to the whole of existence, to the trees swaying in the wind, to the birdsong at dawn, to the silence of the night sky. Nothing is excluded, because nothing is outside of what you are. The boundary between self and world dissolves, and what remains is a seamless intimacy with all that is. This is the secret that words can only circle around. You are not separate from life. You never were. The illusion of separateness is the only barrier, and once it falls, love rushes in to fill the space it occupied. Love is not something you need to acquire. It is what emerges when the false self disappears. It is the natural state, hidden only by the noise of clinging and fear. And so, the journey comes full circle. What began as a questioning of the world's seriousness ends as a rediscovery of its beauty. For when the illusion of separateness dissolves, life does not become dull. It becomes radiant. Ordinary things glow with extraordinary light. The taste of water, the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter. All of it feels like a gift too precious to measure. This is the irony of awakening. In losing the self, you gain the whole world. In letting go of control, you discover a deeper order moving through everything. In dying before death, you find life that cannot be destroyed. You no longer chase meaning because life itself is meaning. Every breath, every step, every moment is complete in itself, and this completeness frees you. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer need to be remembered, or to leave a mark, or to win some invisible contest. You are already home, already whole. What others strive for endlessly, you see, was never missing. The treasure was here all along, waiting to be noticed. Of course, the play continues. The world still spins, people still argue, dreams still rise and fall. But now, you carry a secret. You know that none of it can bind you. You can step fully into the drama, weep with its sorrows, rejoice with its joys, and yet remain free. For you are not the role. You are the stage on which it unfolds. This is why the awakened often speak of life as a dance. The point is not to win, not to get somewhere, not to hold on. The point is to dance, to move with the music, to feel the rhythm, to surrender to the flow, and when the song ends, to bow gracefully, grateful for having been part of it. And perhaps this is the final teaching, that nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be fixed, nothing needs to be attained. What you are searching for is already here, in the silence behind your thoughts, in the stillness beneath your breath. To realize this is not to escape the world, but to embrace it more deeply than ever. So here we are, at the end of this reflection, and yet not an end at all, only another beginning. If something in these words touched you, if they stirred that quiet recognition in your heart, I invite you gently, stay with us. Subscribe to this channel, not as a task, but as a way of keeping the conversation alive. Like the video if it resonated, and share your thoughts in the comments, not as debates, but as echoes of your own journey. Think of it not as following, but as sitting around the same fire together, sharing warmth in the night. For these questions are not mine or yours. They belong to all of us. And when we explore them together, the flame only burns brighter.